Six Al Jazeera journalists, at least that's what people claim, have been recently killed in an Israeli strike in Gaza. And today we might have a word about all of them, but I'm not sure if it's necessarily needed. We'll focus on one of them, especially the person who, if you clicked on the video, you might see on a thumbnail. And we'll also broadly cover this idea of IDF killing journalists in Gaza. I think we've done some episodes about it on the past, but the claim is still being used, it's still in the media, and media always jumps on it. Welcome to the reality show. Joining me today are Marco, Richard, and Michael Kaufman. It's great to have you guys. And yeah, so the basic story is that six journal Al Jazeera employees have been killed in Gaza, and yeah, we are getting different stories from it. I want to really jump into it and start covering it, but first, just maybe we can ask some opening thoughts. So yeah, let me start with you, Michael. What do you make generally of this idea of journalists in Gaza?
Well, I think it's great when people have more than one occupation. I think if you need to have two jobs to make ends meet, I think it's terrific. I do think it's a problem when one of your jobs is being a terrorist and being part of Hamas, especially if you're in a war zone. And as you sign when you sign the contract with Hamas, it does come with disclaimers that you accept that you're a part of a terrorist organization and that the people you're trying to annihilate might just annihilate you first. So I think it's absolutely terrific, frankly, that anybody who works for Hamas is annihilated. I think anybody who aids and abets Hamas, whether they're an official member or not, should be annihilated. And I think anybody calling for the destruction of Israel that supports it in any way, shape, or form should be destroyed. That's the way I don't really believe you need to be shot before you decide to defend yourself. So I think it's terrific what's happened. Last point I'll make is that it's very interesting that the world never really denies that these people are terrorists. What they focus on is that they're journalists. And like I said, that's terrific. There are also people that were surgeons and doctors that were part of Hamas that have also been killed. Nobody ever disagreed with Israel that they weren't part of Hamas. All they focused on that they had a second job, and that's absurd.
Yeah, and of course, there is a certain understanding why you want your journalist or sort of journalist, especially in the war region, to not be targeted. But I mean, Marco, shouldn't then sort of the requirement be to not do something else while you're there?
Well, yeah, here the issue is like people think in a deterministic way, don't they? A journalist is good, therefore whoever has a journalist badge on them is going to be a good person. Well, drop in the context to global size here. The fact that these people are part of a profession doesn't isolate them from the context in which they live. The fact that they are Gazans doesn't mean that they're not Hamas. In fact, you can put an equal sign between the two sides of the equation. And of course, journalists working for the Pravda during the Soviet Union years, they were communists, they were enemies of the West. And exactly the same way with Hamas, with Al Jazeera people, because let's not forget that Al Jazeera, although it's broadcasted in our countries, it's still the propaganda arm of a illegitimate state, a state that doesn't recognize individual freedom, a state that supports Hamas. That's why the leaders hide in Kuwait, Qatar, sorry. And frankly, whatever they say, whoever they are, wherever they come from, if they belong to an organization, a state, or a pseudo state like Hamas in Gaza, you have to consider the context. Whatever they say is baloney. Whatever they say is propaganda. Whether they call themselves Ministry of Health, whether they call themselves governing body of Hamas, they are the same thing, terrorists. And so you shouldn't listen to them at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're being told that these people have dual roles, one being a, in inverted commas, journalist, and one being their role with Hamas. But of course, it's really a single role, isn't it, anyway? Because it's advocating for the destruction of Israel and the death of all Jews in both forms when it comes from Gaza in the way that it does. Well, I think what's more frightening and disturbing about all this is the way in which major news organizations in the West simply take the output of these people as truth. And they do it for a whole bunch of reasons, depending on who they are. Now, sometimes people say that they're duped by by the stuff that's being. I'd like to find one that's actually duped. I mean, quite honestly, sometimes people claim they're naive or they're just lazy in terms of verifying the sources. Well, again, your job is to verify the sources. Your job is to corroborate the information you've got with the wider information you have, and therefore to represent the truth as accurately as possible. And there are many different ways with like open source intelligence that people can verify and backtrace images and look at timelines for things and be clear about exactly what they're presenting, even if they're not necessarily on the ground in Gaza, which is often used as the reason for using the output of these weasels without question. And of course, yeah, many of these news organizations are like second-handers anyway. They don't want to step outside of the herd. They don't want to take any kind of a risk. So they're just going to do what all the others are doing. And if they're showing a picture on their front page, they're showing the same picture, issue the same broad outline of a report, and hide within the weeds of what everybody else thinks. And that, of course, is not journalism either.
Yeah, and when you said this sort of idea that maybe people are lazy to like check the sources, when it comes to news organization, that's your job. That's what you do. You check sources of what you're getting it. So maybe propaganda doesn't get in. I mean, it reminds me. Here is a random reference of like watching Nightmare Kitchens with like Gordon Ramsay. It is like when they start like cooking like frozen food that they bought somewhere. Well, you're a restaurant. You're supposed to do something, and then they complain that it's hard to like make fresh food every day. Well, that's what you do as a restaurant. What do you mean? Go do something else. If you don't want to check sources, go do some other job where you don't have to check sources. Go actually work for maybe Russia Today or some actual propaganda that everybody recognizes is propaganda, not for these news organizations that are still considered sort of more reputable. I was thinking the order I want to go through with this episode. I was thinking we could go into Al Jazeera comments, but actually let's leave them for the end, especially because we need to cover who this person actually is. So the specific person we're going to be talking about is Anas Al-Sharif, and we'll talk about a few things. But first, question for you, Michael. I'm not sure if you ever said, and it might be too personal, so maybe you don't want to say, but where were you on October 7th?
We were about literally boarding a plane from Frankfurt to Tel Aviv. My daughter and wife actually got on the plane, and I was in bed just cleaning up some documents, and they stopped us, and we held there. And there was a lot of buzz around that we knew that something not good was happening in Israel, but they hadn't shut the planes yet. So I never boarded, and they were disembarked, and then all flights to Israel were shut down. We got stuck. We were in Frankfurt for I think 3 or 4 days before we could get back to Israel.
Yeah, and many people have similar stories of either being in Israel, experiencing, not knowing what's happening, not knowing what's happening to their family members. Well, let's see where this journalist was on October 7. Let's see where this person that everybody is like trying to defend now was on October 7. So I was really surprised when I saw this because I recognized this picture. I saw this before. This is the guy. This is the guy we're talking about. This is one of the journalists that was killed. For people on the podcast, yeah.
Sorry to chip in, Daniel. I think there is some confusion in how some of this is reported because I think there's two faces that look very similar, and this is one of the other faces. This face here being of Hassan Eslaya, who's a photojournalist. who you know, the same kind of scumbag we're talking about, quite frankly, just happens to be a different one. And the photo of Sinwar kissing him is also the same guy, Hassan Islaya, photojournalist, who was a freelancer, who was working for things like people like the Associated Press and CNN, and he was taken out by Israel back in May. And by taken out, I don't mean out to dinner. I mean out of existence in the strike, which is great, as is today's attack. But I think because his face is very similar to the guy we're talking about, some of it has been mislabeled. Sometimes that gives people a chance to say, well, it's not true, it's mislabeled. But of course, it's all relevant. It's all relevant that these people are pretending to be one thing while clearly working for Hamas. But I'm sorry to chip in, but I just wanted to make
No. Well, that's good for stopping me. So I, again, wouldn't actually spread something that's not true. But yeah, so we can go into more things, and I'm gonna just quickly check a few more things just to confirm. But yeah, this is the kind of people we're talking about. People who were there on October 7th. Somebody in the chat is saying, well, they were there recording what's happening. That was a terrorist event. You don't. It's not something you simply go record. It's not something that you know, you're just a passerby. You are allowing it to happen. You, at the very least, are not stopping it. You are looking at terrorism being committed, people being taken as hostages, people being taken as hostages, people getting killed, and you only record it. You act as if it's nothing happening, and you know, maybe you could defend it, but those people then continue spreading propaganda. So again, this is the idea that they are simply recording it is ridiculous. Michael?
Well, don't forget the timing of this thing. I mean, he was part of the early wave, if I'm not mistaken. You had to know stuff was going on. You could barely get through there. And this is chaos going on. Remember, 5,600 Gazans / Hamas, which we can put an equal sign on approximately, broke through the fences in Gaza to take over and destroy Israel. And the plan was to go to Tel Aviv and annihilate Israelis all along the way and take over Israel. That was the plan. And it was unfolding over hours. For the first 24 hours or so, there was no real well-coordinated Israeli response. I mean, there are pockets of resistance. So this guy was part of the plan. You don't get to be in a military operation if you're just a journalist. That's not how military operations work at the beginning. And anybody with half a brain, really, you don't need to think much, understands that this is all part of a plan to document the atrocities and put fear into people and show how amazing Hamas is.
Yeah, and to bring up just a few more things, again, just so there is not that much confusion about who we're talking about. So the same guy or this guy specifically, where do I have his name? Anas Al-Sharif. So on October 7, this was also posted by many people. He was celebrating, I think he said 9 hours, and the heroes are still roaming the country and killing and capturing. God, how great you are. This was recorded, of course, on the Telegram groups because many sort of, as we said, sort of like open source people are or have infiltrated some of the Telegram groups. We talked about with Aitan Fishberger about the UNRWA group that also have been the teachers that have been celebrating October 7th. So this is something very similar, basically people going out and again, if this guy is supposedly a journalist, you have somebody that is celebrating a terrorist attack and you have him on your payroll. Now, I don't expect much integrity from Al-Jazeera, but I would expect it from people dealing with this situation. Marco?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I totally refuse the title of journalist to these people because a journalist in a dictatorship is not a journalist. Journalism, in terms of gathering, collating, disseminating, presenting, and analyzing facts for the purpose of information, is something that you can only do in a free or relatively free environment. You cannot be a journalist for Hamas, China, Russia, North Korea. This is just propaganda bodies that spew out something in favor of the state, in favor of the narrative which keeps the echelon of the state in place, helps them to keep and gain power. So I wouldn't call them journalists in the first place. But it's particularly interesting, the reaction here in the West of so-called journalists. I mean, bear in mind that we live in a mixed economy where we have a good degree of freedom, but a good degree of state control by regulation and legislation as well. So in most countries in Europe, for example, you can only be a journalist if the state recognizes you as such. So you can sit, I don't know, exams, or you register with the state in order to be a journalist. So in a way, our journalism is pretty much propaganda. Just read the BBC, read the Guardian. That's pure propaganda, leftist propaganda, Islamofascist propaganda. And that's why, in a way, the blob, the deep state and the media are part of it, are coming out in force and condemn this event. Well, first of all, because they hate everything Israel does. Whatever Israel does is wrong. But also they feel personally under attack because they cannot allow themselves to be seen for what they are, i.e. a means for the propaganda, for statist, collectivist propaganda, the big WF cross-governmental attempt to control everyone, really. So they don't want to be seen to be under scrutiny. So they're condemning Israel for attacking journalism, but they know very well this is not journalism. They know very well that when they ask for Israel to provide evidence that these are actually journalists, they know that they're ignoring what these so-called journalists themselves have published, like Daniel just quoted the Instagram message from the guy himself. How much more information, how much more proof do you want that these guys are actually Hamas journalists? And as Michael pointed out, to be there at the right time with the people committing the atrocity of October 7, you're not just a journalist that happened to go along. And the fact that journalists are just observers is often exploited to justify the fact that they are aiding and abetting this kind of events all the time.
Yeah. No,
Just quickly before I go to you, Richard, the picture of him with the Hamas leaders, that's him, right?
yes.
Okay, so let's show this one just so.
Oh, that one. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So this was the person we mentioned, Al-Sharif, and here he is with Al-Haya and Sinwar. So again, journalist. I mean, I know that in the West, especially if you win like a Pulitzer Prize or something, you meet with maybe the president of the United States, and these guys are technically the representatives of Gaza, but still it's a terrorist organization, and it's again somebody that is again, the reason why it's a problem with calling them journalists is it has a certain credo to it. It has a certain respect for it, and these people are not giving it any. They are using it. They are using that respect to spread propaganda, to basically be supporters of terrorism.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And you quoted his Telegram message talking about nine hours into October the 7th and referring to the perpetrators of it as heroes. And I wanted to compare that quote by this guy who's just been hit in this strike and removed from Earth with this quote about this event which took out these people. This is a quote: "Deeply concerning to all of those journalists who have been doing heroic work in Gaza." Now, who do you think that's a quote by? Is that a quote by Hamas? By Al-Jazeera? No, that's a quote from Jeremy Bowen of the BBC. So what is the difference, therefore, between this kind of journalist that we're talking about here, quoting October the 7th heroes, and Jeremy Bowen quoting the heroic work in Gaza of those praising the heroism, in inverted commas, of October the 7th? I mean, it's despicable, isn't it, to see it lined up like that? And as you guys said, sometimes journalists are embedded with the military, aren't they? That they move under with the military campaign as a journalist that has foresight. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the horrific terrorist activities on October the 7th, aren't we? This is like claiming that there were you could be embedded on one of the flights heading towards a tower on 9/11 and report from it, leap out in a parachute and claim you were just reporting, you were embedded with the resistance. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it shouldn't. No thinking person should be convinced by the argument that it's just reporting what an army does in the same way. I mean, it's despicable. But it's the Jeremy Bowen type quotes and it's the BBC type coverage, which has described this guy in all sorts of different ways. And of course, it's poured utter cold water on Israel's claims at every opportunity. It says that Israel has, quote, this is the BBC, provided little evidence to support its claims. Don't appear to be substantial proof. Don't explain why this guy was an active threat. There's huge skepticism over Israel's claims. These are all different journalists within the BBC. And they're all claiming that, you can't possibly trust what Israel says. And that's in the wake of what we're discovering about this inverted commas journalist and terror journalist. I don't know what word we can come up with to describe them, but apart from scum.
Yeah, I mean, there is this idea of like selective questioning, or I don't know what to even call it. And you see it in many ways, right? Yeah, I see it a lot with sort of like alternative media. It's like they question everything about mainstream media and everything about government, but this guy that has no oversight is just spewing nonsense. Oh no, he's speaking the truth. We can trust him. And in a similar way, it's it's the IDF. They are waging the war, and we have no journalists, so we have to be careful about the information. We have to wait to see more. We cannot just simply report what IDF is doing. But here are Hamas numbers, and here is what Hamas has been reporting, and what the journalists that we don't really know anything about are reporting on the grounds. Again, with no accountability, with no actual trying of like the same kind. Like I understand like IDF scrutiny, right? You want journalists to be especially sort of questioning the military or the governmental claims. But again, when it goes only one way, that's not objective journalism. That's simply propaganda for one side. We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. A super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. Another super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. A super chat from Enric. Thank you. He says, my take is the willingness to demonize Israel is from the cowardice in appeasing militant Islam. I mean, yes, to some extent, and I want to add one more comment on that, but we have a super chat from Frank. Thank you so much. He says, democracy now sheds tears for Hamas, quote, journalist. Thankfully, I don't watch Democracy Now! On a regular basis, but when we check them out again, I'm not looking forward to that day. We can definitely bring it up. But something about what Enric said. So I think that is something Netanyahu said at his press conference, that apparently in private, the world leaders, especially the European ones, tell him that they are on his side, that they are behind Israel, but it's because of the population or because it's the inside pressure that they cannot really do anything about it. Now, I'm happy to see that with Jeremy Corbyn's new party, that pressure will go away from Labour and we'll have this like pro-Israel Labour finally. But Michael, any comments on? I guess we can comment on the sort of this idea that the world is not behind Israel, or the world leaders are not behind Israel just because of the internal pressure or cowardice in appeasing the militant Islam.
Well, I think part of the definition of leadership is to show people the right path, and a path that's sustainable, and a path that will help them reach prosperity, which in our definition in the West means individual freedoms and the ability to realize one's potential. There is nothing about the current progressive agenda, or the extreme left-wing agenda, or the Marxist or the Islamic agendas that have anything to do about individual freedoms or individual potential. There's no precedent on earth ever that any of these philosophies have led to human flourishing in any sense, except for a small number of oligarchs and theocrats and so on. And yet the leaders of these countries, who I guess don't really care about the future of their countries, because you can continue to talk about this in local and blame it on the initial problems now. But let's take France, for example. Continue to support Hamas, continue to support Islamism. Great. What's the future of France? Do you think investors are going to come in and want to build companies there while people are forced to pray 5 times a day and the female workforce is removed? Do you think anybody's going to want to do business there? Do you think people are going to want to fly to Paris anymore? If all you do is get a bunch of crazies who are listening for you and looking to see if first you're Jewish, then if you're LGBTQ, and so on and so forth. This is a complete and utter failure of Western leadership. It is remarkable to me how feckless and invertebrate-like the leaders are. And it's even more disgusting to hear that they're not afraid to tell Netanyahu in secret. I mean, what are we, in grade school? Get up there and speak the truth and look at your own countries and what you were built on.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to sort of succumbing to the Muslim vote, one, I don't think it will really work for anybody. I think this is my sort of like hypothesis that to a large extent, this is what lost the Democrats' election, is the fact that they did this like wishy-washy. We are kinda want to get the Muslim vote, but also not really, and it ended up just Jill Stein taking all the votes because genocide Harris and genocide Joe Biden. So again, when you completely give in to these like really evil ideologies, you won't win actually anything. You will simply surrender any good values that you might have. I want to go to the IDF statements, but Marco, any comments on? I think I've seen something from the UK coming out today, but now I cannot remember. So, any comments on the?
Well, there's lots of stuff coming out of the UK. It's mainly crap right now. To be honest, I mean, the Labour Party trying to appease the Muslim vote is totally. I think it's just a red herring. I don't believe that for a second. I mean, they know that the Muslim vote here in Britain will only really give you a few seats in Parliament. Up to 2015, perhaps 20, 40, something like that, which is a relatively small number. And the fact that the Corbyn party and the pro-Hamas side is splintered off the Labour Party is pretty relevant. I mean, Labour in its own DNA has got anti-Semitism embedded in it. The fact that one of the people who was protesting in favor of a proscribed terrorist organization, Palestine Action, just last Saturday, was a former advisor to Tony Blair. I mean, Tony Blair is not the extreme left of the Labour Party. He's the Labour Party itself. So the fact that these kind of characters that used to be in bed with Blair are actually involved in this kind of open anti-Semitism, open support to a terrorist organization, it gives away the values of the Labour Party as a whole. They are anti-Semitic because they're a bunch of Marxists, because they're a bunch of collectivists who just want to see a globalist UN-led government for everybody because it's good. That's why they're in the pocket of the unions. They love equity because they found freedom as a threat. Because if you think with your own head, if you're free to think with your own head, if you're left alone, first of all, you don't need a journalist because you see the event, you're able to evaluate them themselves. But second, they don't want you to use your effort, your ability, your work to make your life better. They have to be intervening. They have to be the people in charge or tell you what to do or what to think. It's totally the Marxist workbook, really. They will never get away from that.
And I think in terms of the British politics side of it, take, for example, the fact, as you said, that Corbyn has come up with this new party. So a rational person would think that all of the crazies who are anti-Israel or anti-Jewish would gravitate towards him, leaving behind rational people. But it simply doesn't work like that. And it's such a disintegrated world and culture that we live in that every individual issue is treated as its own little bubble, completely separate from every other issue. And every individual group is its own little bit that's got no association with any other bit. And you just direct your policy and your latest statements to each bit or each bubble in order to answer whatever is today's challenge, even if it contradicts what you said 10 minutes before. And that's exactly what happens at the moment. I mean, so all this means is that Labour will also campaign to try and get those Corbyn people back again by trying to be anti-Jewish, anti-Israel as well. At the same time that they're also speaking to potential reform voters and trying to win them on side by saying that they're not in favour of the Islamification of Britain or anything like it. So all of these it's just different voices in different directions, and its own little reporting of it can sometimes make it look like they're saying what you want to hear. But what you would need to see is what do they say to the people you don't agree with, in order to really verify how truthfully, how firmly they hold any given view, because then it's just exposed for being sound bites, to be honest.
Yeah, and with that, well, just one quick comment on that. One of my favorite polls to watch is second choice, when you like watch who would you vote for, and then they also ask who is your second chance when voting, because some of them are so hilarious when it comes to like my own country, because you could have like, okay, these guys are voting for like the Communist Party, and their second choice is this like right in the middle, sort of like a progressive party. And I'm like, who, like, why is this your second choice? But both of them are popular. So I'm thinking, so do you just like the people who win? Yeah, when it comes to sort of, I think that shows the disintegration when it comes to politics, is when you see sort of people's ranking of political parties they would vote for. Because I think, I mean, I'm not sure how many polls there are right now with the sort of like Corbyn's new party, but I've seen that pretty much they are taking some votes from every single party. So Conservatives, Reform, and Labour, which to some extent it should be impossible. To some extent you should think, well, they should only take from Labour and maybe Reform, since they are also sort of like the anti-establishment party. But yeah, these things sort of like show the disintegrated nature of the culture. But let's actually cover the IDF statement. So this is what they said on X. It's an emoji of like a target getting hit and the big struck. Hamas terrorist Anas Al-Sharif, who posed as an Al Jazeera journalist. Al-Sharif was the head of Hamas terrorist cell and advanced rocket attacks on Israeli civilians and IDF troops. Intelligence and documents from Gaza, including rosters, the terrorist training lists, and salary records, prove he was a Hamas operative integrated into Al Jazeera. A press badge isn't a shield for terrorism, and they also posted those documents. And then I've also found, I'm not sure if I also send it to you guys, but last year in October 2024, and I think we've covered this story, IDF discovered documents inside of Gaza where six Al Jazeera journalists, six Al Jazeera employees are actually operatives in the Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad terror groups. And this guy, Anas Sharif, was among them. So again, this is not, as many people try to say, an idea fabricated story. We have a clear sort of thing that this goes back a year when IDF discovered the fact that these people are Hamas operatives and has now managed to eliminate them. I want to also go to Al Jazeera, but Michael, any comments on the idea of operation and the
Yeah, look,
statement.
I think I haven't seen any time, I can't recall since the war started, any time when Israel has made a claim that if it did make a mistake, then it retracted it. But I've never seen a foreign news organization or any other foreign government actually prove that Israel was lying in when Israel didn't actually say we screwed up and apologize. If Israel continued to lie, there would be a lot more outcry and screaming, including from the governments. The fact that the facts are never debated here. The actions may be debated, but the facts are not debated. And this notion that you get out of jail free because you have a second job as a journalist or as a surgeon or as a physician or as a humanitarian aid worker while you're a terrorist is only the progressive morons could come up with such an absurd notion. Also, people who never fought in a war or never defended their own life could come up with this. But it's very clear that Israel has ample documentation. And one of the reasons we never see anything come out of all this outcry from a state point of view, a country point of view, is because there's nothing to back it up, this outcry. Every one of these leaders knows exactly what information was available and would have done the same thing, hopefully, if their country were under attack. But as part of this continued baloney that's going on, and God knows when it's going to stop, they just think that pandering to untruths and pretending that journalists who also work for Hamas have any benefit in the world, I don't understand where they're going. But we all should understand that the leaders have failed, especially the leaders in Western Europe. Biden and Harris failed miserably. The world is a much more dangerous place now because Joe Biden was asleep at the wheel, demented at the wheel, and in trouble, and didn't stand up for anything of any importance. Crime in America has gone up, et cetera, et cetera. We can write the same text around any European country or any other Western country where the leaders have failed to stand up for simple, basic things like you don't support criminals, you don't support terrorists, you support individual rights, and that is missing. And until it returns, we're all going to be in a much more dangerous and much more unhappy situation. And finally, we're going to be paying a lot more taxes to clean up the absolute mess that these wretches of the earth create for us.
Marco?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about journalism, and what's a staple of journalism? Facts. And facts is exactly what the media in the West is ignoring. Again, Israel over and over and over again has provided information for every single step that they've taken. But the media here choose not to look at it because you cannot refuse reality. It's there, it's in your face. But choosing not to look at it, evading it, is a way for them to continue spewing the propaganda. And they keep pushing the line from the UN, the line that Israel is always in the wrong. Whatever they choose to do, they're wrong. They provide food to the enemy, or they shouldn't do it because they don't doing well. They are defending themselves, or they shouldn't do it because their civilian enemies are dying. It's like, come on, people, what side are you on? And that's exactly the question to ask. What side are you on? I mean, Israel is a civilized place here who's been attacked. Yeah. So what are you doing? Every time you go against Israel, every time you question what Israel is doing, you're handing out a get out of jail free card to Hamas, to the people who are perpetrating these continuous attacks on civilizations. You're allowing the Islamic Republic of Iran, I mean, there's nothing more Islamofascist on the planet than that. They're allowing them to get away with it. They're allowing them to continue their propaganda machines. There's a video on, what's his name, Ryan
McGrath?
McGrath, yeah. That actually shows how during the attack on Iran, the bots that Iran is using to produce propaganda went silent. When Iran switches off the internet, suddenly this bot disappears, which is the proof that Iran is using this kind of propaganda against us. I mean, these people are waging war on civilization. They're trying to destroy us from within. Why are we getting let them get away with it? We know they're doing it. We found proof, and we still choose to look the other way. We still choose to go against the party with it's protect individual rights to a certain extent in the Middle East. The only one, the only democratic party state in the Middle East. I mean, this is facts. This is a matter of looking at stuff out there, evaluating with your own mind. Don't look at what flag is being flown in the street, what chant is being chanted, what kind of rhyming songs they're using. It doesn't matter. The facts, reality cannot be faked. It's there. Just look at it.
Yeah.
So just quickly, just to throw in two more things that you can comment on, Richard. First, something that Marco said about people evading. I mean, when I was researching this, a quote from Ayn Rand very quickly came to mind. The hardest thing to explain is the glaringly evident, which everybody has decided not to see. So yeah, we can. And with that, somebody in the chat says, "Nah, Marco, that's on Israel for not allowing in independent journalists." And yeah, I can see Israel letting in independent journalists, and then one of them gets kidnapped, or one of them, unfortunately, as happens in a war, gets killed by Hamas, or even gets killed by the IDF, right? Like if you have like people running around that you are not like directly, like journalists went into Gaza under supervision of IDF. People that wanted to go and were protected by the IDF could say. But if you're talking about just letting them go in, yeah, I'm sure this would be very positive for Israel, even if the coverage wasn't, which I think even the coverage would be bad no matter what because it's war. But let's say even the coverage was positive in favor of Israel. The fact that you have these people running there and you are risking their lives. You could say they are the ones who have chosen to risk their lives, but this is not what we see whenever something like this happens. It always gets blamed on Israel. The hostages that are all on Hamas, yet Israel still somehow gets blamed for it.
Yeah, how can you claim there are no journalists in Gaza when you keep hitting journalists and complaining about it, and there are Hamas journalists, aren't they? What kind of journalists do you want there? Your favorite journalist? I mean, why can't you rely on the publication and the proof that the IDF provides with a relentless pace? To be honest, if I were them, I wouldn't waste my time trying to provide evidence to the press because they're not going to believe it anyway. So you're just wasting your time, wasting your resources. And frankly, let's ignore also the fact that the journalist, one of the people who was holding hostages during the Arnon rescue last year, was actually a journalist. His dad was a doctor. Doesn't mean that doctors are not Hamas. I mean, all these facts are out there for you to look at them and realize that you can put Western journalists on the ground, but as Daniel said, what's going to happen if they get attacked, if they get injured or kidnapped? What are you going to do? Are you going to complain that Israel should have protected a bit more? They should have not been careless and let them go in. I mean, whatever they do, they cannot win, whether they mean or not. And bear in mind that most of the journalists that would go into Gaza, there would probably be propaganda for Hamas anyway. So,
Yeah, I absolutely, and I do notice in the course of the recent reports from Israel, including some of those that Netanyahu has led press conferences and things, they've started to try and use rhyming phrases as counter arguments to the rhyming phrases that are chanted on the streets, such as "Open your eyes to Hamas's lies," are written on a big screen.
Oh, that will give them.
Yes, I mean. That's just depressing to see descend to that level in terms of trying to counter an argument by such a ludicrously base method, because that is not going to work. I mean, look at how the BBC reported all of what we're focusing on here. They said the BBC cannot independently verify these documents, all these documents provided by the IDF showing Al-Sharif and his Hamas past. And yet, Jeremy Bowen from the BBC also says Al Jazeera have refuted, dismissed, and denounced the fact that Al-Sharif was a member of Hamas. So that's proof. Yeah, I don't need to question any of that. Al Jazeera said it, therefore it's true. Israel said it, can't be trusted. That's the point you made earlier, but yet again, that's another example of it, and that's related to this particular case. And when to Al Jazeera, this is one of Gaza's bravest journalists. To a Lebanese newspaper with clear links to Hezbollah, this guy is a martyr. I mean, it doesn't matter which way you look at analysing who he is, who he was, you come to the same answer. Unless, of course, you're choosing to blank out the elements of truth which make that clear so that you can continue to peddle your lies. And I think that's what these international media organisations are doing. And you don't need a rhyming phrase to make that understood.
Yeah, Israel is one rhyming phrase away from winning this war, I'm sure. Maybe Netanyahu can do a TikTok dance and, that will be finally bridging the gap. Something I haven't mentioned is basically when this guy we're talking about, when he died, he had basically somebody who had control of his X account. They had instructions to basically do this like long post about basically that he died. That was written back in April, and it's pretty long. And he sort of like says bye to family. But one of the things he said was, I urge you to stand by them, to be their support after Allah Almighty. If I die steadfast upon my principles. I testify before Allah that I'm content with His decree, certain of meeting Him, and assured that what is with Allah is better and everlasting. So yeah, and he also talked about the martyrdom, which again, that's such a sort of like a death obsessed culture to be in. The fact that this is viewed as something great to do, to die for the cause, instead of, maybe if Palestinians were more happy to live for something rather than die for something, we wouldn't be in this situation. But unfortunately, nobody is demanding anything like that from them. Now, I want to comment a little bit more on Al Jazeera. We've mentioned a few things. Again, they call him this sort of big employees, and he was really sort of like known. I think he has like 500,000 followers on X. So yeah, he was definitely somebody known. Al Jazeera has also said, this attack comes amid the catastrophic consequences of the ongoing Israeli assault on Gaza, which has seen the relentless slaughter of civilians, forced starvation, and the obliteration of entire communities. The order to assassinate Anas Al-Sharif, one of Gaza's bravest journalists, and his colleagues, is a desperate attempt to silence the voices exposing impending seizure and occupation of Gaza. So here we have a situation where we know Al Jazeera is a state sponsored, it's basically just a propaganda arm of Qatar. We know they actively employ terrorists knowingly and use that, yet they still have office in London and in Washington, D.C. I mean, I think we did one episode with Alex where we talked about it. I think we should be getting to the point where we should realistically discuss if this is sort of an organization that should be even allowed. A company like Russia Today is banned in West because we understand this is not some sort of like free media or some sort of independent organization. It's simply a propaganda arm of Russia that we are, maybe not a direct war, but we are definitely fighting against. Now, Qatar is still technically an ally, but Al Jazeera is absolutely helping Hamas, helping different terrorist organizations, and even the states like Iran to fight against the West. Michael, I mean, what do you make of these comments from Al Jazeera? And yeah, even the fact that such an organization is still licensed in the West.
Well, it took Israel a while to get rid of Al Jazeera and take away their license.
By the way, the Palestinian Authority also banned Al Jazeera.
Well, yeah, because the Shiites and the Sunnis, I'm pretty sure hates, hate each other. The remarkable thing about the West's inability to understand that, let's assume Israel goes away because nobody helps them and the Muslims overrun. What do they think the next step is? That the great Islamists are going to go get trained at a tech school and learn engineering and become electricians and engineers and so on, or medical doctors? What do they think is going to happen? This is terrorism, pure and simple. Al Jazeera has been aiding and abetting this for a long time. The idiots on the left and the people that think they're very smart intellectuals love to use the argument that if we ban this particular free press, then we are going down a slippery slope. The slippery slope argument is a great argument to do nothing, because every decision we make is a step on the slippery slope. And of course, every law that we make is a step on the slippery slope, and you have to decide when you want to stop, and how you do it. So I absolutely support getting Al Jazeera is clearly just a mouthpiece for all these terrorists. It is clearly not helping. It doesn't report anything honestly. I mean, frankly, BBC doesn't either anymore. CNN barely does. MSNBC is even more of a joke. Those are at least a little more credible. But Al Jazeera needs to go. And it's very simple. You just say people who don't report equally need to, or at least balanced in some sort of balanced way. We all know what that looks like, by the way. In America, funding to PBS, to the public broadcasting system, was finally shut down in America. Billions of dollars were pulled from them because they have 95% Democrats and progressives on their staff. And they're supposed to represent the public, and they're receiving federal funds. So I don't understand what the big deal is here. We know what Al Jazeera is doing. We know their track record, and I think we absolutely should ban them. And if and when they want to prove to us that they can report facts, then we can let them back in. But until such time, they don't get a place and they don't get a journalist license.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly a few corrections. So Qatar isn't Shiite; it is Sunni. I think the reasoning why, and Palestinian Authority is not the only authority or representative government that has banned Al Jazeera. I think a lot of Middle Eastern nations do not like Al Jazeera because they understand it's a Qatari foreign, basically foreign like foreign relations organization rather than anything else. And just quickly on the sort of like the reasoning for it banned, they can be biased all they want. I mean, if there is an organization in America that only talks about how Trump is great, you can do that, but you cannot take foreign money actively being supported by it while being our enemy. So if Russia Today was simply an organization that advocated for Russia, as long as we are not at war with them, it's okay. It's the fact that they are state funded, they are getting money from state that I think is problematic. And similarly with PBS, I don't care about balance. You don't exist, you shouldn't exist, because this is not the purpose of government to fund this public broadcasting, whatever. Marco?
Yes. Another reason why Al Jazeera is still present here, especially in Europe, is because while Michael was at the airport on October the 7th, guess who was in Qatar on October the 7th? The leadership of the EU signing up to a massive contract for the supply of gas. We're talking millions of cubic meters of gas from Qatar, and France got of course the share of the deal. So we know why France is so keen to appease the Palestinians. We know why Al Jazeera is treated like a legitimate, independent source of news, because they serve our leaders, don't they? Our leadership here in Europe is totally sold to every single dictator on the planet. They will lick their boots, suck up to them to ridiculous extent. I mean, the UAE is just struck a trade deal with Russia. The UAE is actively funding the war in Ukraine. And what do? Oh, we still go and and travel to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi even got a branch of the Louvre, the museum in Paris, in Abu Dhabi. I mean, come on. This is obviously a, a super unholy alliance between Muslim countries and the elites here in the West, who are quite happy to use the prestige that comes from the freedom that we have, the freedom that allowed us to become as powerful and wealthy as we are. Not for long, by the way, but and they use this kind of prestige to impress the people who actually stole our wealth by stealing all the technology and the oil fields that we had in the Middle East in the first place. The kind of discoveries and invention that we made, they made them theirs, and they use it to beat us on the head with that. And of course, because we fall down on the super altruistic moral relativism that we are adopting in the West, we help them to hit ourselves on the head. And our elites are just enjoying themselves on jollies with the big Qataris and all smiles and backslapping and big lavish dinners, while we're here wondering why is this happening.
Now, Michael mentioned the notion of balance within journalism, and the fact that we do know when we see accurate journalism, and we know that because we know what objective truth is, and we know what's linked to reality, and we know what can be validated against the other knowledge which we've confirmed. But of course, people often claim balance where there is none. And they've even managed to do it in the case of this guy we're talking about, this Al-Sharif guy. Because the BBC commented, for example, that in some of his social media posts before his death, the journalist criticised Hamas. Therefore, he can't be Hamas, can he? I mean, that's exactly the the same argument that
Why did he criticize them?
They don't show me any evidence of that. I'm supposed to take that as read.
Maybe it was, maybe it was Hamas is too weak. It should go stronger, which is the criticism many Palestinians have.
No doubt, but we're led to believe that he was not a sold up member of everything Hamas does and the way they do it, and therefore he's not in bed with Hamas. But I mean that's kind of the same argument. I mean, Marco mentioned earlier the Ryan McGrath coverage of the bots from Iran. And the fact that those were used to instigate things like advocate for Scottish independence in the UK in order to foment dissent within the UK, for example. And when Iran turned off the internet, as Marco mentioned, that the bots went dark and revealed who they were. And when they came back on, they started talking about how terrible Israel was. All of these that were supposedly so interested in Scottish independence suddenly all reverted to the same talking points about Israel and Iran all at once. And of course, when you look back in those history of those bots, not only did they say things about Scottish independence, for example, but they also tried to look like they were balanced by showing other types of tweets within their feed in order to make themselves look like they had some different opinions and they were covering other cultural messages of the day. So they try and disguise themselves, but that doesn't show balance, and this doesn't show balance. And it's only objective reality and the links to reality which can verify the fact that somebody is genuinely speaking the truth. And that requires you to open your eyes, to think, and to properly integrate your knowledge, which is what Ayn Rand talked about so much.
Yeah, and with that, Michael, any last thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, I think Israel would do well to just not respond to these accusations. I think they simply continue to put out the facts. I think a yeah, but argument with people who close their eyes to the truth and many who know full well who's telling the truth and what's really going on here. And just ignore them. And really, you do have to have leadership to do that. And you simply, here are the data. You want to not look at the data, that's okay. If I did that on my patients, they would die. And their families would sue me. When we have engineers, we have to do the same thing. When things don't work, we have to study them, understand them, and fix them. We don't get to ignore facts in the real world. And as you guys mentioned, Marco and Richard and Jeff Bezos said, I love this quote, reality always wins. So Israel needs to stop defending reality, just put the truth out there and move on. There'll be another criticism tomorrow, and it's best to just deal with that tomorrow. Michael Kaufman, 2Fs, LinkedIn.
Marco, any last thoughts and where can people find you?
Yes, and another quote from Ayn Rand, nature doesn't have contradictions. You cannot hold a contradiction, because if you do that, well, then check your premise. You will find that you cannot have a free press in a dictatorship. You will find that you haven't got journalists in Gaza, because Gaza is a country run by tyrants where freedom of speech, let alone press, doesn't exist. So a journalist, a Hamas journalist itself is a contradiction term. It's just a jihadi. It's just somebody that fights in order to destroy Israel. So don't believe these people when they talk freedom of press and the press itself is under threat, because there's never been press, and what they've been hit is just terrorists. What Hamas has ever given us is terrorism and death.
And one of the things I notice in some of the reporting is the even if syndrome, which within the BBC reports gets right down to effectively, even if this guy was a Hamas terrorist, the Israelis have not explained why they killed the entire crew, why they killed the other Al-Jazeera journalists as well. And that's the same argument they're constantly using. They use it even when it comes to the pager attack, one of the most targeted, events that any country has done against its legitimate enemy. It's super targeted at exactly the terrorists who were holding those pagers. But there might have been other people nearby, or the kids might have been playing with the pager at the time it went off. And all of those stupid arguments are used, which ignore the fact that if the pager is in your house, you are putting your kids at risk. And if you are choosing to be a terrorist and you blow up the person next to you, it's because they are, right next to you harboring terrorists. So frankly, that argument is moot.
Yeah, or an Iranian ambassador might have held that pager. You don't know who's doing that. Not to mention, we have some videos of those pages blowing up, and even standing right next to the person would mean that person would get blown up, or what it wouldn't get blown up. It would be injured, and the other person standing right next to wouldn't. But with that, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Daily Objective and The Reality Show. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.